Ever think about like all the secrets families keep? The kind of things that end up shaping who we are, even if we don't know they exist.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, today we're diving into two stories
Okay.
from NPR's Throughline
Gotcha.
that kind of explore this whole idea.
Okay, interesting.
One about a woman who uncovers a family secret that totally redefines like her whole sense of who she is.
Right.
And the other one's about a Native American tribe
Okay.
that's reclaiming a tradition that's almost like bringing their land back to life.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. Bringing it back to life, huh? I like that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how those two stories connect, you know.
Totally.
They seem like worlds apart, but they both come back to this theme of like reclaiming what's been lost.
Exactly.
One's this really personal journey of self-discovery, and the other one's about fighting to revive a whole culture and an ecosystem.
Exactly. So the first story, he's just 23 chromosomes,
Okay.
introduces us to Anya Steinberg.
Okay.
She was an NPR intern,
Yeah.
and she discovers this life-altering truth.
Uh-oh.
She was conceived through artificial insemination.
Wow.
Can you imagine, like, finding out later in life
Yeah.
that the man who raised you isn't actually your biological father?
Oh, yeah, that would throw everything you thought you knew about yourself up in the air.
Exactly. It really makes you question everything, right?
Totally. And what's really striking is how differently Anya and her brother react to this discovery.
Right.
Like, Anya feels this intense need to connect with her sperm donor.
Yeah.
It's like she needs to fill in the missing pieces of her identity.
It's
But her brother Ari is practically indifferent.
like he doesn't even care.
Yeah, it's almost like he sees it as an opportunity to, like, distance himself from their father,
Right.
like a way to break free from a relationship that was already kind of strained.
Really highlights how we all process these family secrets differently, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how our definition of family is so personal.
For sure.
Anya actually brings up this Korean concept of Han to try to explain how emotionally heavy this whole experience has been for her.
Okay, so what is that?
It's like this complex feeling of sorrow and resentment that's passed down through generations.
Wow.
Almost like inherited trauma.
That's heavy.
Yeah. Han is a pretty profound concept.
I can imagine.
And it adds this whole other layer to Anya's search.
Right.
It's like carrying the weight of your ancestors' struggles with you.
Oh, wow.
This deep feeling of injustice.
Uh-huh.
And this like longing for something that was never fulfilled.
I see.
It makes her quest to find her biological father even more poignant.
Yeah.
It's not just about curiosity, you know?
Right.
It's about understanding those forces that have shaped her whole life,
Exactly.
both personally and culturally.
It's like she's trying to figure out where she fits in the world.
Yeah.
Where she comes from and how all of that makes her who she is.
Exactly. Now, the second story, The Gift of Fire,
Okay.
takes us to a completely different setting.
Where?
The ancestral lands of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes in Montana.
Wow. Okay.
But it also deals with reclaiming something lost,
Okay.
just on a much larger scale.
Interesting.
This one focuses on the tribe's battle to restore their traditional fire practices.
Okay.
And that fight's like deeply tied to their cultural identity
Uh-huh.
and the health of their land.
It makes sense.
For generations, fire has been this vital part of their culture.
Right.
Not as this destructive force,
Yeah.
but as a way to manage the land and to revitalize it.
I see.
But then you have these decades of fire suppression policies
Oh, right.
driven by this like Western fear of wildfires.
Yeah.
And that's had a devastating impact on the whole ecosystem.
I can see how that would happen.
The very thing that sustained the land for centuries was suddenly seen as a threat.
Wow.
And the consequences were huge.
Yeah, what happened?
The story talks specifically about the disappearance of camas.
Camels.
It was a traditional food source for the tribe.
Okay.
And it couldn't thrive without those regular controlled burns
Right.
that had shaped the landscape for generations.
So we have these two completely opposite views of fire.
Yeah.
The tribe sees it as this beneficial force, like a partner in keeping nature in balance.
Right.
And then the Western view is that it's something to be feared
Exactly.
and controlled at all costs.
And that tension is
Yeah.
at the heart of the tribe's struggle.
It's not just about restoring a practice then, is it?
No, it's about reclaiming their heritage
Right.
and their right to manage their ancestral lands
Yeah.
according to their own knowledge and traditions.
That makes sense.
The story mentions these fire makers.
Fire makers.
They were once like revered members of the tribe.
Wow.
They had this deep understanding of fire's behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and they knew how to harness its power
Mm-hmm.
for the benefit of the community and the land.
It sounds like they weren't just setting fires,
No.
that they were taking care of the land, making sure there were enough resources for everyone, for generations to come.
It was a practice that came from centuries of observation
Wow.
and a profound respect for the interconnectedness of everything.
That's amazing.
It's really heartbreaking when you think about how that knowledge was just dismissed,
Yeah.
suppressed.
And it led to the very problems
Exactly.
that fire suppression policies were supposed to prevent.
It just shows how important it is to understand and respect different ways of knowing
Yeah.
and relating to nature.
For sure. Yeah, it really makes you think about like what happens when we favor one way of knowing over another.
Yeah.
In this case, fire suppression. You know, it came from a good place,
No.
but it ended up messing up that balance that the Salish and Kootenai people had been keeping for centuries.
It really challenges that whole idea of wilderness that
Yeah.
we romanticize.
Right.
Like pristine nature untouched by humans.
Yeah.
But it ignores the history of indigenous people who've been shaping and managing those ecosystems for generations.
Exactly. It's like this romantic idea that erases the role indigenous communities have played as stewards of the land.
And that's not just some abstract idea.
No.
It affects how we approach things like conservation and land management.
For sure.
The story of the Jocko Prairie is a perfect
Tucked
example.
in there.
So after decades of fire suppression,
Right.
this once thriving ecosystem got choked with all this dense vegetation.
Uh-huh.
And the camas, that vital food source,
Yeah.
had practically vanished.
Oh, wow.
But when the tribe brought back controlled burns,
No.
like mimicking the natural fire cycle,
Right.
something amazing happened.
Yeah.
The camas came back.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's like the land itself was waiting for fire to come back.
Yeah.
For that practice that had sustained it for so long.
It's like a phoenix rising from the ashes,
It's
literally and figuratively.
makes you wonder what other traditional practices we've forgotten
Right.
or dismissed.
That might have solutions to the environmental problems we're facing now.
It's such an important question.
Yeah.
And it speaks to this growing movement of indigenous communities reclaiming their ancestral fire practices.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just preserving their traditions.
Right.
They're showing how valuable traditional ecological knowledge is
Right.
for dealing with things like climate change and biodiversity loss.
Exactly.
It's inspiring to see the Jocko Prairie coming back to life.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the tribe's perseverance and the resilience of nature.
It reminds us that sometimes the solutions are right there in the wisdom of the past.
It's interesting how Anya's story and the Salish and Kootenai story seem so different but actually have a lot in common.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
They're both about this yearning to reclaim something that's been lost.
Yeah, to fill a void.
And in doing so, they're trying to understand themselves better.
And their place in the world.
Anya's searching for her biological father to find that missing piece of her identity.
Right.
And the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes are working to bring back this practice that's not just about managing the land. It's about strengthening their connection to their ancestors and their culture.
It's pretty amazing how those two stories parallel each other.
They both emphasize how important it is to acknowledge and honor the past.
Not just for sentimental reasons,
Yeah,
but because it has valuable lessons for the present and the future.
absolutely. It's like both Anya and the Salish and Kootenai are saying, we can't really know who we are or where we're going without understanding where we came from.
No.
It's not just about looking back, though, right?
No, it's about using that understanding to move forward.
Like Anya's search is about really understanding herself, finding that sense of wholeness.
And for the Salish and Kootenai,
yeah,
it's about making sure their community and environment are healthy
Right.
for generations to come.
it's a powerful reminder that the past isn't just something in a textbook.
Definitely not.
It can actually guide us toward a better future,
The more fulfilling one for sure.
a more sustainable one, too.
Both these stories give you this sense of hope
Yeah.
that even when things are lost or disrupted,
Mm-hmm.
we can always renew and restore.
Whether it's a piece of our personal history
Yeah.
or a cultural practice that was almost forgotten.
Bringing it back to life can be really powerful.
For individuals.
Well, communities.
So we've covered a lot today,
We have.
from personal identity to cultural and environmental restoration.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all this?
I think the most important thing is that we all have something to reclaim,
Yeah, that's good.
whether it's part of our history, a lost tradition,
Yeah.
or a deeper connection to nature.
And when we reclaim those things,
We can heal ourselves and
Yeah.
help our communities and our planet.
It makes you think about your own life.
It does.
What stories have been lost in your family?
Yeah.
What traditions have we forgotten?
And could those things help us face the challenges of today?
Maybe there's an old family recipe
Oh.
that connects you to your grandmother.
Or a craft your grandfather was known for.
Uh-huh.
Or even the story of how your family came to this country.
Those little things can mean so much.
They really can.
They give us this sense of belonging
Yeah.
and connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Especially in a world that feels so uncertain.
It's a beautiful thought to end on.
It is.
By remembering and reconnecting with our past, we honor those who came before us.
And we learn from their wisdom.
So we can face the future with more purpose and understanding.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.